everybody. My name is Brandon, as you heard, and who here is excited for Youth Takeover? I know we already prayed for the pastors, but I just want to honor, them, and Pastor Faye and Pastor Yessie, for letting us run this. I think it's just like a big opportunity for the youth that we get to have this honor, right? And today our topic is how to change the narrative. Also, there's one more person I want to honor, my mom. She's done so much for me, and I'm just thankful for her and my whole family. So, as you guys heard, today is what it takes to change the narrative. And some of you don't know, or now you know, I'm a youth student here at Sozo. And I just want to also shout out the interns. Where my summer interns at? Okay. So, we all like stories, right? All right, that's pretty cool because I like to do stories too. So, if many of you don't know, I repeated the second grade. So, when I came back the next year, I was older than all the other kids in my class. And they all expected me to, know everything. They would say, "Why are you still in this grade?" Or, "Aren't you supposed to be smarter than us?" And my classmates expected me to know everything, and I still don't to this day. At first, I was embarrassed, and I started thinking, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I messed up my own story. But then God reminded me, this isn't where your story ends. This is where I'm building something new. And that year turned out to be one of the best things that happened to me in my life. And I started learning how to push through. God was helping me change the narrative. Now let's take a look at a man, or should I say boy, named Josiah. And in 2 Kings 21, it tells us that he became king of Judah at 8 years old. Now that's crazy. Think about it. Imagine you're 8, you just became king because your dad just died. And speaking of his dad, it also says his pops and abuelo, yes, abuelo, we live in Miami, were evil, but an evil to where they worship false gods and not our pops in the sky. Josiah's dad did not do good, but it says Josiah did what was good in the eyes of the Lord. So that means Josiah inherited a broken story, but he didn't repeat it, and neither should you. And as it says it perfectly in 2 Kings chapter 23, verse 25, neither before nor after Josiah was there a king like him, who turned to be Lord as he did with all his heart, and with all his soul, and with his strength, in accordance to the law of Moses. Now there was 3 things that pointed out to me about Josiah and how he changed the narrative. And I'm going to give you a little cheat code on how you can too. So number 1, humility. In 2 Chronicles chapter 34, verse 27, it says, "Because your heart was responsive, and you humbled yourself before God, when you inherited what he spoke against this place and its people, and because you humbled yourself before me, and tore your robes, and wept in my presence, I heard you, declares the Lord." So we see here that Josiah had to do was humble himself. Josiah needed humility to change the narrative, and the Lord gave it to him. Now, number 2, obedience. In 2 Chronicles chapter 35, verse 1, it also says, he brought back the holy traditions of the people of God. And in 2 Chronicles chapter 35, verse 7, it also says, he took from his own possessions to provide the sacrificial lamb for the Passover offerings. And that was one of the ways King Josiah showed honor to God's law. So that means when we show obedience to God, we honor him like Josiah. And that brings me to my final point, being fearless. It's a good one, right? In 2 Chronicles chapter 34, verse 7, it says, he tore down all the altars in Judah. Think about it. That's crazy, right? And some of you might think being fearless is like a brave hero. But being fearless doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means feeling fear, but it's still doing it anyways. Now let's be honest. We all get scared, and so did Josiah, especially when he became king at 8. I would be scared too. So let me ask you something. Are you ready to change the narrative? Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but when you humble yourself, walk in obedience, and live fearlessly, you will see a change in your life. A change where if you see yourself before, you would say, wow, that was me. So it starts now. And remember, you still have time. Now, how could you apply this to your life, you ask? Well, let me be real with you. I was not expected to be the way I am today. My family came from a whole mess. Like my dad had no dad and my mom had no dad. My family came from a whole mess. Like my mom, her stepfather did evil things. He idolized false gods, did witchcraft, and messed with her life. But look at her now. She's thriving in the way God intended her to. So my family never thought she would be the way she is today. She chose to change the narrative like Josiah. My family line was not the best of them all. She chose to break that curse like Josiah. He had an idol worshiper as a father, but God gave him, us, a chance to come back to him. So I have a question about you. What story do you need to stop repeating? God is still calling people to rise up like Josiah. Even if you're young, even if you think it's too late, you don't have to repeat the story that was handed to you. Josiah changed the narrative, and so can you. It's time to change the narrative.
So I want to start off by introducing myself. So I am a youth student here at Sozo Church, but I'm actually also a first-generation Christian, which means in my family I had 2 amazing parents, but going to church it wasn't our tradition. It's not what we did every Sunday. And from the age of around 7, I always had such a hunger and such a craving for God. I didn't know anything about him. My parents would talk about him sometimes for encouragement, but I wanted to know him on a personal level. I wanted to know Jesus. I wanted to know this Jesus that everybody was talking about. And it was through my humility and my simple prayers. They didn't have to be elaborate. I would just pray and ask God at 7 years old, God, are you real? And he met me where I was at. He met me even though I didn't come from a family that were Christian or went to church. He met me exactly where I was at because he saw my desperation and he saw the love that I had for him. And I say this because my story, it reminds me a lot of a boy in the Bible named King Josiah. I say boy because his story began when he was only 8 years old. So for a little bit of background and context, Josiah came from a family of rulers who had been evil. They were notorious for being bad rulers. And his father, he actually got murdered by his servants because he led the nation so badly because he didn't know how to lead. He didn't have God in his life. And the nation of Judah, which was a nation that Josiah eventually took on, it was so far from God. They had so many false idols, and they didn't have the love of God in their nation. And Josiah, he had a choice. He could either continue that history or change the narrative. And that's the title of my message today. Josiah went on to be the best king that Judah ever had. In fact, the Bible states in 2 Kings 23:25, before him there was no king like him, who turned to the Lord with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses, nor did any like him arise after him. Now, the reason why I say this is because the reason why I put the Bible verse is because even the Bible acknowledges that Josiah was different from the other kings. And I think one of the most notable things about Josiah was his humility. And that's actually my first point. Josiah's response to conviction demonstrated his humility. One of the high priests and servants had found this book of law and they showed it to Josiah. And in this book of law, there was a covenant, which was a promise between God and his people. And the people of Judah were so far from this. And Josiah, he tore his clothes from grief and shock. And he just had so much humility and said, I understand what I'm doing wrong. From tearing his clothes to recognizing the flaws of the nation of Judah. Josiah received God's conviction as a blessing and a call to action. And in our own lives, sometimes we see conviction as a curse. We think, why am I being shamed right now? Why am I so embarrassed? Why do I feel like I'm not deserving of his love? But conviction is a glimpse into God's heart. It's a glimpse into what he wants for us, and it's his salvation. Conviction is such a blessing, and it's such a gift. Josiah humbled himself so much towards the Lord and accepted his conviction as a blessing that the Lord saw his efforts and honored it. In the Bible, in 2 Chronicles 34:27, it says, "Because your heart was tender and you humbled yourself before God, when you heard his words against this place and its inhabitants, and you have humbled yourself before me and torn your clothes and wept for me, I also have heard you, declares the Lord." The Lord hears us in our humility, in our desperation. The Lord hears us. And Josiah's humility made room for God to work in him. But I think the most important part of Josiah's behavior was that he converted his conviction into conduct. Josiah didn't sit there and wait for somebody to save him because he knew that God's conviction had already done just that. When Josiah saw how far his nation had been from what the Lord's original plans had been, he immediately made room for the Lord to work through his obedience. And that's my second point, obedience. His willingness to immediately clear everything that was hurting the Lord shows his obedience and utter respect and reverence to God. In 2 Chronicles 34:21, Josiah told his council, this was after he had read the book of law, he tells them, "Go inquire of the Lord for me, and for those who are left in Israel and in Judah, concerning the words of the book that has been found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that is poured out onto us, because our fathers have not kept the word of the Lord to do according to all that is written in this book." I love the fact that he acknowledges that the past generations had made a mistake, but he didn't want to stay in that rut. He acknowledged the mistakes of his descendants, and he said, "I don't want that any longer because the Lord has revealed himself to me, and when he revealed himself to me, he's making a change." In my own life, I've been praying for my parents to come to church. I love my parents so much, and, I was the one in my family who met God, and a lot of the times I would be like, "God, why? Why is it that I pray? Why is it that you don't see my parents? Are they just stuck? Are you never gonna make them go to church or love you or experience the love that I have for you?" But I wasn't being obedient. I would come home from church. I was happy at church, and I would come home and I would disrespect them. I wasn't even serving in this house, and I expected God to just bless my house. I didn't care about this because I wasn't treating it with obedience. And the Lord, once I did that, once I started tithing, once I started serving in my house, I started treating my parents with love, showing them the love that Jesus revealed in me. They started coming to church. They started asking me questions. Because obedience does not come without responsibility and without sacrifice. Josiah knew that by him clearing Judah of its false idols and gods, and essentially unnormalizing the normal, he could have been judged, he could have been looked at differently, or worse, even killed. Work that had taken the people of Judah time and effort, but work that Josiah understood could no longer exist in the presence of the Lord. We have to understand that despite how ingrained idols may be in our lives, when the Lord calls you to change the narrative, the old no longer has room to live. In my own life, I've prayed an endless amount of times for God to use me. And when he finally did was when I gave him room to move. I had to pray that he could remove the idols from my life. I met the Lord when I was young, but I ran from him, and he met me again at a Taylor Swift concert. The Lord will meet you wherever you invite him to be. And even though I wasn't born in a family that took me to church every Sunday, being born into something meant nothing when the Lord gave me a chance to be born again. And I'm speaking to everybody today because I know that a lot of times we doubt that God is doing something in our lives, but the Lord made us all unique for a reason. And there's places that need you, that your work needs you, your family needs you, your friends need you, your school needs you. There are people that need you, and they're just waiting for you to say, "God, I will be obedient, Lord. I will walk into what you are calling me to. Lord, I will be humble, I will be obedient, I will be fearless," because it's scary. It is scary, but the Lord has you through all of it. He's never gonna let you go through something that didn't have to pass his hand first. And the Lord understands that. So my question for all of you today is, are you going to be humble, obedient, and fearless into what God is calling you to do in your life and the lives of those around you? Will you change the narrative?
Amen. Thank you so much. Before I even get started, I just want to honor again Pastor Matt and Pastor Key. The fact that we're up here and we get to do this just says how much you guys believe in us and how much you care about us. And also, Pastor Yessi and Pastor Faye, I would not be here and how far I have gotten without you two. You guys have pushed me in ways I when I had nobody, I can go to you, and I just love you guys so much. And I would like to honor one more person, which is my mom. I love her so much. If you know anything about me, is that I am attached to my mom by the hip. It got me going to church to actually get out of my comfort zone. But I just love her so much, and I just love you, Mom, so much. But I want to share a little bit about me. When I first met God, yeah, you guys can sit down. I'm so sorry. I forgot to say that. When I came first to God, I was never brought up really like Christian. I came and I was like, you guys are honestly the weirdest people I've ever met. Why are you guys so happy? You're just like really weird and I don't want to be here. But when I met God in a youth camp, I was bawling. I was bawling so bad, and I from that moment I was like, I am deciding to walk with you. And the more I stepped into that, I pushed forward and I didn't let anything hold me back, but the only thing I knew is that I wanted to walk with God, that I wasn't gonna let anything tear me down, that I knew I wanted a future with the Lord. And thank God I did, because if I not have made that decision that day, that youth camp, or I was bawling my eyes out, I would probably not be here today in front of you. But a fun fact about myself is I play the drums, okay? So this is not really my comfort zone. I've never really done this, so pardon me. But again, my pastors love to push me. But even when I started playing the drums, there's always haters. Let me tell you, I'm going to be the first one to tell you, okay? I was playing the drums, and this was a couple months, right? I was a couple months in. I wasn't great, right? But someone legit came up to the cage, and they're like, Leah, you absolutely suck. Quit. And I'm like, thank you. And I wish I could have been like, no, haters are going to hate. I'm going to walk this passion that the Lord has gave me. But I will be lying to you today, and I don't lie on the altar. So I went home, and I cried like a little baby. You know, I was just bawling my eyes out. And during this, sermon that we were preparing, we really wanted someone that pushed the boundaries, pushed and changed the narrative, and wanted something new. And that is Josiah. A fun fact about Josiah was 8 when he became king, and he didn't become king because he was an amazing 8 years old. Like, nobody is that great at 8 years old to be running a whole kingdom, okay? He was given this role because his father actually got killed by his servants because he was super evil. So even the servants were like, dude, this guy is just so bad. Like, we got to kill him. So his father was really bad. His grandfather was also super bad. So he wasn't coming from a generation that was great. He wasn't coming from a generation that they were pastoring or they were leading an amazing kingdom. It just wasn't that for Josiah. And it says that in 2 Kings 23:25, neither before nor after Josiah was king, neither before nor after Josiah was there a king like him who turned to the Lord as he did, with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his strength, in accordance with the law of Moses. Before God even knew, or even Josiah knew that he was going to be a 8-year-old king, God had a plan for him. Actually, a fun fact is Josiah's name meant God saves and Lord brings salvation. God had a plan for him. Okay, Josiah did not know when he was, stepping into this role at 8 years old, he was going to lead a kingdom. And it literally says in the Bible that there is nor before or after Josiah was a king like him who turned to the Lord. I wish, if I was in the Bible, I wish that was me, okay? I wish that. But it's not me, I'm not in the Bible. And my name just means Leah. It is in the Bible though, so you can check that. But throughout his life, he had so many things that were against him. He grew up in this kingdom that worshiped false idols, okay? That's hard. Growing in a kingdom at 8 years old, he was doing what his father was doing. He was not brought up Christian. He was worshiping these false idols. And at 16 years old, he met the Lord. Now, when he started meeting the Lord, he was like, okay, it's time. It's time to stop all of this. So they were like cleaning out, and they're cleaning out this temple. And while they're cleaning out this temple, they found a covenant. And a covenant is basically like God's words. And while they're doing this, they're like, oh my gosh, Josiah needs to see this. They went to Josiah, and they're like, guys, Josiah was horrible. It says in the Bible that he tore his clothes. Now, that's something they used to do back then. Please don't do that now if you get, But that's something they used to do when they're in such grief. He was in such grief that he couldn't believe that his father, his grandfather, had been living so far off of what God has planned for them. And then even him having to grow up in that, and that was the norm. That was their norm. That was his narrative that he was given. And one of the things in his life that he did very often is have humbleness. He responded to his conviction after he found out that, oh my gosh, I've been living so wrong. He did not say, okay, I'm living wrong anyway, let me continue. He didn't say, okay, well, I'm king anyway, so who are you? Who's God? It doesn't matter. No, but he tore his clothes, he left it behind, and he started walking in with God. He started tearing down the idols. He started to turn his kingdom to victory. He also, in the Bible, it says that he sought guidance. He went to this woman that, God spoke to her. And basically she said that God told her that your kingdom will be destroyed, okay? It just sucks so bad. You have been doing it all wrong. So basically your kingdom's going to be destroyed. But thank God you're king, okay? It's not going to be destroyed right now. So he started, okay, I'm good. But what do I do now? And you can see that he always went to someone. He always put down his ego and said, I need people. I need people to guide me. It's hard to do that because God knows I had a stubborn heart when I came. I didn't like people telling me, oh, you did that wrong, or you're acting a certain. I didn't like people correcting me. But over time, I realized that's the best thing about Christianity. Being a Christian is that people can call me out, but they're not calling me out, they're calling me up. They want to see me succeed through the things I have. And another one of his things and his whole story, it's easy to say things with our mouth, right? I can say I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow. You will not catch me at the gym tomorrow, okay? But one of the things he had was obedience. He walked in that like, I'm going to do what, I saw this covenant, but now I'm gonna walk in it, right? It reminds me of a football team. Does anybody like football? Great, I don't. But one of the things he had is, in a football team, the best person that can throw is going to be your quarterback. I know that. I looked it up on chat. The best person that can defend is going to be in your defense line or your offense line, okay? Because you have faith that they're going to bring you to victory. You have faith and trust that they're going to make you win that game and go to the Super Bowl, right? Why can't we have that with God? I have so much trust and faith that I don't know how to do it. I don't know my plans, but I know that as long as I'm walking with God, I'm going to lead to something. There's going to be an end game. I don't have to be fearful. And another one, if you're taking notes, point 3 is fearlessness. Thank you so much. It's been hard for me to pronounce some of these words. I'm not going to lie with you. But fearlessness is hard. Against obedience is hard. A little bit about me is I was unfortunately abused as a kid, right? I had this narrative that I was going to live sad for myself, that came with suicidal thoughts. It came with sadness. It came with a lot of anxiety and not feeling like I had a voice in the world. That was my narrative. That's what I thought in my mind. And when I came to God, I was like, I don't like you. A lot of things that people say is, how can bad things happen to good people? And that was one of those people that were like, you love me so much, but you let me get abused. How I don't like you. And it got to the point where I was falling on my knees and I was like, God, I just need your help. I can't live suicidal anymore. I can't live with all this sadness in my heart. It hurts, and I don't want to live anymore. There's no tomorrow. But I can say I did not become victim to those things. I did not become like Josiah's father, where he had a whole life and whole generation that were looking down on him. He was so evil. I did not become evil. I became a victor. I did not become victim. Okay? I can say now that I'm worshiping God. I can say now I serve the Lord. I walk with the Lord. And it's hard. It's hard to be fearless. And it says again in the Bible that he tore his clothes. What are things that you need to tear off you? What are things that you need to get so angry about that they're attached to you and you're not living the way God has designed you because you have that relationship that's holding you back? That you're not living because you're not living this life with God because things are attached to you, those friendships. Even sometimes it can be yourself. That you don't want to do it because you're so scared and you're so you just have so much fear in your heart. I know somebody that's fearless. I know somebody that's bold, and it's Jesus. I know that he can deliver you from those things. Now, I'm not telling you come up here and tear your clothes again, because no, we don't want to see that. But go home, write them down, give them to God. Say, I'm so scared, but I want to tear these things off. I want to get to the point where I'm so hungry for you. I'm so hungry just to be with you every day. I'm so hungry to get into my word, to get into my prayer every single day. And that comes with transition, and that comes with change. You know, I'm only 15 years old. I'm a little kid, okay? My birthday's in like 2 weeks. I know. I'm turning 16. I get to drive my own vehicle. But it's a testament to say I'm 15 and I'm walking with Jesus. In a world that is so against Christianity. It's so against Jesus, especially being a teenager. Saying, I believe in Jesus. People make fun of you. People don't care about how you feel. Actually, they're like, aren't you a Christian? Shouldn't you be acting this way? Yeah, thank you so much for reminding me. But that took change to be where I am today. And for you, it's not too late. It's not too late to change the narrative. It's not too late to be a Josiah and to say, I'm not going to let my past define me, but I'm going to let it be my testament to how God works in my life. It's now. Now is your time to change the narrative.
Come on. Let's make some noise for Leah. Stand up. What an incredible message. That was so amazing. Leah, that was just incredible. I don't think you could be replicated. I honestly think you're not just a gift to the youth, but you're a gift to the world. Really. I see it in your mom. I see it in everyone. Everyone loves you. You're amazing. But hey, guys, my name is Jonathan. If you don't have the pleasure of knowing me yet, usually I'm outside, but tonight this morning, I'm on this side of the altar, which is nice. But I want to take a second and again honor Pastor Matt and Key. You guys are amazing. Thank you for just trusting us. And Pastor Faye and Pastor Yessi, thank you just for everything that you do and just pouring into the youth and seeing what I see in them. You know, it's hard. I think there's a world that counts down on the youth, but I really do believe that they're here to change the world. But hey, I love this topic about changing the narrative. I think when we came up with the idea, it was super funny. I loved it. And I'm actually trying to change my own narrative currently. I think a lot of people believe that I'm a napper. Right? I'm a napper, and hey, I don't know about you, what you do after Sundays when you leave these doors, but I know what I do. I go home, what's up, Ma? What's up, Pa? Straight to the bed, and I'm like, I see those sheets calling my name, and it's like a little whisper. The AC's cold. I turn the fan on. I hop in. I wake up hours later. It's nighttime. It's dark. My throat's dry. I'm thirsty. I don't know what it is. I'm sweaty for some reason. I love naps. I'm a napper, and it's okay. I wasn't ashamed of that, right? But it started getting in the way of my productivity. I was just napping all the time. I wake up, and I was like, great, I got nothing done. That was supposed to be 30 minutes. It was 3 hours. So whatever, people started to associate me with naps. And I had a little problem with it the day Fernando called me, wanting to go to the gym, and he just answers the phone like, "Hey, wakey, wakey, it's time." I'm like, "Fernando, what are you doing?" "I'm over here. I'm on my computer writing this sermon, actually. Like, I'm being productive. Don't try me like that." So I was like, you know what? I got to break this narrative. I can't live like this no more, and I can't be known as the napper. Right? But in order to change that narrative, it's going to take some work, right? We all know it's going to take some work. I was just like a week in. I'm probably like on week 2, and I messed up a bunch of times. I didn't mess up. I just rested my eyes. But hey, look, I think just like Leah told us before in Josiah's life, he was able to change that narrative, right? But it did take some work, right? And so this morning, I want us to look at what kind of work he applied in order to change that narrative. And we're going to read in 2 Kings 23, verse 4. It says, "Then the king instructed Hilkiah, the high priest, and the priests of the second rank, and the temple gatekeepers to remove from the Lord's temple all the articles that were used to worship Baal, Asherah, and all the powers of the heavens. The king had these things burned outside of Jerusalem on the terraces of the Kidron Valley, and he carried the ashes away to Bethel." Right? And so King Josiah, he's like, all right, the first thing I'm going to do after, grieving and seeing how far we are is I'm going to get rid of all these idols. My dad was okay with it. My grandpa was okay with it. For some reason, ain't none of the advisors in the kingdom were like, "Hey, I don't know if it's a good idea. God's pretty good to us while we got this other thing." I think it's easy to say that. I'm looking over. If I was there, I'd be like, "Yo, I'm not following no idol. It's the same God that parted the seas and stuff. I'm going to stay with him. Like, I don't care about no pole. Like, what's a pole going to do to me?" So then I think it's easy to say that from this side, right? And I think a lot of us are the same. We're like, "Yo, I would never do that. That's incredible. They suck. I'm pretty good." But I think a lot of the times we're actually the same. But something that Josiah's story told me was that you can't be content living in compromise, right? And so he tore down these idols that his father and grandfather are okay with. And we say we would never do that, but I feel like we do. Right? I think we have our own idols in life, and we want the best of both worlds sometimes, right? We want to have God, right? Of course I want to have God. I show up to church on Sunday. What do you mean? Like, this is my God time. But we also want to have the things in our life that compete with him, right? And this could look different for everyone. It doesn't have to be as clear cut as a shrine and an idol, but it could be money, right? It could be status. It could be the need for control over your life. It could be a relationship. It could be a schedule, right? I think a lot of us are so tied down to our schedule, and we don't even leave time for God to move in us, right? We're just so tied. It was not on the calendar. I can't do it, bro. Sorry. Like, come on, go out with some people, make some coffee, make some friends, whatever it is. And I think that when we live like that, it works to an extent. I think you can get far enough in life competing, but I think the Bible is very clear that we cannot serve two masters. So it's going to come to a point where you're reaching for this satisfaction, and you will never achieve it. You will never achieve it. And I think it starts with breaking that idol, right? And if you don't know where to start, just start like Josiah did. He just looked at God, and he's like, "I love God, but I see all these things right next to God, and I got to break them down because I know he used to be the first one." So just start like Josiah. If you see an idol, whatever it is in your life, just break it, right? But what that tells me is that not only can you be content with living in compromise, but you also need to break old patterns, right? In 2 Kings 23, verse 16, it says, "Then Josiah turned around and noticed several tombs on the side of the hill. He ordered that the bones be brought out, and he burned them on the altar at Bethel to desecrate it." Right? And so I can see the picture. I can see Josiah, just walking around, and they're burning the things. I see the smoke pillars, right? And everyone's around him, and he's like, "All right, good. We're burning it. We're getting it done." And then someone sees a little tomb, and they're like, Josiah's like, "What's that?" Right? And they're like, "Yo, Josiah, that's actually the priest's bones that created these altars in the first place." And Josiah comes to this decision where he's like, "You know what? No, dig them up, burn them, because we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it all together, right? I don't want the bones. I don't want nothing, right?" And if I was there, I would have been like, "Josiah, it's already in the ground. I gotta dig it up, and the tomb is. I don't know how deep it is, but I'm sure it's pretty deep, But Josiah found it was important, and I think it's also significant too. And it's easily looked over when you read 2 Kings. But I asked myself, why, right? Why did Josiah make this decision to dig up the tomb, right? And I think Josiah understood something about changing the narrative that can help us. I think that some things that needed to be dealt with weren't just on the surface. I think they were buried deep, and Josiah recognized that. And I think the reason why we keep going back to old patterns in our life is because we have unhealed roots underneath it, right? I think, of course, a lot of us strive to have a better relationship with God with all these things, but we keep beating ourselves up because we mess up and this and that, but it's really because you have an unhealed root underneath it. And I think that if you want to change your narrative, you cannot just break the idol, but you have to heal the wound that gave it the space in the first place, right? I think healing the root changes your story for good. And something about Josiah is that he didn't just start digging until he felt like something wasn't right. Right? I don't know how many of you work on your own cars, but I work on my own car. I wish I could say it was just because I love cars, but really it's just because I'm cheap. I'm cheap. I want to save a little penny. I'm like, man, I'll change the alternator myself. YouTube mechanic, I'll find the video. I'm sure I'll figure it out. If I don't, we'll figure it out from there, right? But I got a little story. One time I had a new socket set, right? It's like a little toolbox. And I was so happy. I was like, if you know anything about socket sets, they get messy. You lose the pieces. But this thing was brand new. And I told myself, I was like, yo, I'm going to keep it brand new for the rest of my life. No one's borrowing it. It's mine. My dad's not touching it. No one can look at it, right? I'm going to just put the pieces back and it's good. So the first time I'm using it, I'm working on my car, whatever, me and my dad. I love my dad so much. I love him to the world. But if any of you know, having the pleasure of working with your dad on something, especially a car, is not always the most fun, especially when it gets hot. You both start getting frustrated. So whatever, I'm working on the car. I finish up. I'm like, all right, I did that battle. I go to back up the car. My dad's outside. He's just watching this all happen. And I just hear a boom. Something explodes. I look around. My toolbox, I ran it over. The day one, I got out of the car. I was like, Dad, come on. You watched it all happen. You just stood there. And he's laughing. And I'm like, God, I couldn't even have one day for real. Like, just one day. Like, I just want it organized. And now all the pieces don't fit back in the spot because it's squished. And to this day, it's just kind of, I just ball it up and I close it. And it's like bulging open. And I'm just like, whatever, I'll find a piece. But something that tells me at some point in life, work is just frustrating, right? Work is just frustrating. And I'm sure that Josiah was also frustrated at times. But I believe in Josiah's life, he used that frustration to change, right? He used it into changing his narrative, right? And I think that frustration is that space between where we want to be and where we are, right? I think that's where Josiah found himself, right? He loved God, right? He wanted his people to walk in the truth. I mean, he's the king. But when he saw how far they are, when he saw the commandments, he grieved, right? He grieved. He tore his clothes to that point. Like, he was upset. He was frustrated, right? And I think we're like that, right? And it's not that we don't care a lot of the times. It's easy to believe that, but I think it's the opposite. I think that in your lives, you care so much that you see this gap, right? You see this gap where you are versus where you want to be, right? And it could look like a lot of things. It could look like where we are now versus where we want to be then, right? What our family looks like now versus what we would want it to look like, right? What we look like spiritually now versus what we want our relationship to God would look like. And if I'm speaking personally, for me, my frustration was with my life and my family life now versus what I wanted it to be, right? I want a house for them. I want them to stop working. I want all these things, but I don't have the control of it yet. And it's hard to see that. And it was hard for me to accept that, right? And so I needed to change something that frustrated me so bad. So I had to break the thought of, man, I'm not lazy enough, right? I'm not disciplined enough. I had to break that because I understood that something needed to change, right? So that told me that frustration wasn't the enemy, right? That frustration was an invitation to act, to respond, and to change your narrative.
Come on, can we make some noise for our preachers? Leah and Jonathan, make some noise. Hey, this is just the tip of the iceberg that you get to see, because they don't just talk about this, but they walk it out. They're changing narratives in their life and the people around them. So I'm so proud of you guys. One more time, can we make some noise for Jonathan and Leah? Hey, you guys can be seated real quick. I get to land this thing. I don't know how I'm going to go after that, but that was beautiful. It was incredible. Like me and my wife said, it's our greatest honor to serve the next generation. In fact, like Pastor Matt is always saying, the now generation. It's our greatest honor. We love being here, and we've been here for such a long time. We've been here since like 2013. Yeah, it's a long time. I don't know. I'm not good at math, but we've been here for a while. But it's been beautiful to see kind of God place us in spaces that I necessarily didn't really think that I would end up at. If I'm honest with you, this was not in my plans for my life. I'm just a kid from Miami. I'm a Chico from Miami. I got nothing. I did not plan to be a youth pastor, I promise you. All my life, I had a lot of dreams. I had a lot of goals, right? I wanted to play professional basketball. I got into bodybuilding. Then after that, I started cutting hair and all these things. And so many things that I wanted to do. I had so many dreams. But for some reason, I felt like everything that I did failed. It just didn't work. I'm like, God, why is it that everything I try to do not work? God, why am I failing everywhere? And then I start believing the lie that God, maybe it's not the thing, but it's me. Maybe it's not a fail, but I'm a failure. God, maybe it's me. So when we got the positions to be youth pastors here, I'm not going to lie to you. The first thought that came to my mind was, God, how is this going to be any different from everything else that I've tried to do in my life? God, how am I not going to fail at this too? And maybe a lot of us in this room feel like I felt. God, how are you going to use me? God, I know that you can use those people over there, but God, how can you use someone like me? Maybe you feel like I'm just normal. I don't got a crazy story. Maybe you feel like God can't call you because of your mistakes, because of your fears, or because of your doubts. Listen to me, if you're here and you feel that tug in your heart to change the narrative, it is not by accident and it's not by coincidence. God put it there. Listen to me, God knew that you would be here at Youth Takeover before you got here. It doesn't matter if it's your first time or your 100th time. God knew that you would hear, because he wanted to tell you that you can change the narrative in your city, in your school, in your friend group. Everywhere that you go, you can change the narrative. And it doesn't matter how old you are. I'm so grateful for a God that will use Josiah, a king at 8, and he would use Abraham in his old age. God is not looking for people that are perfect. Listen to me. God does not care about your age. Maybe some of us might feel like, man, it's too late for me. Listen to me. This generation, these next ones coming, need you. They need you. Listen to me. Your world needs you. Doesn't need me. You have a world only you can reach. And God is calling you to change the narrative. And if you feel that you can't, I want to share this verse, and it's Isaiah 6:8. And it says this, we get to see a heavenly conversation that Isaiah sees in a vision of God having a conversation with what some scholars say is with the Trinity, with the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And it says this, then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, who shall I send? Who will go for us? And I said, here I am, send me. Here I am, send me. Listen to me, if you feel like you're not perfect so God can't use you, God is not looking for perfect. God is not looking for polished. God is looking for available. He didn't ask Isaiah, are you ready? He didn't tell him, I don't know if you got it in you. Listen to me, some of us might feel like we cannot change the narrative because we don't have what it takes. When God called Moses, he asked Moses, what do you have in your hand? And Moses said, I got a stick. And God said, that's enough. What you need is already inside of you. You just need the courage to bring it out. Listen to me, God is calling you to change the narratives around all people in your life. You might not have heard of King Josiah. Maybe you've heard of people in the Bible like Daniel, Jeremiah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But let me tell you, these people were under the reign of King Josiah. So you might feel like you trying to change the narrative might not accomplish something because you might not see the fruit of it immediately. But here's the truth. Josiah changed the narrative there so they can change the narrative when they got there. You can change the narrative in your life, and a lot of times it's not just for you, but it's the ones that come after you. God is looking all across the the earth. This verse in Isaiah tells me that God is constantly looking throughout the earth for someone to partner with. Who will go for us? Who shall we send? And I think there's some bold people in the room today that are willing to say, God, here I am. Listen to me, God does not need any more celebrities. God does not need any more influencers. God does not need any more famous people. What he needs is men and women of God that will stand up and say, God, here I am. Would you send me? God, would you send me with my imperfections? Would you send me with my doubts? Would you send me with my questions? God, here I am. Send me. God, here I am. Send me.